Hello, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. We're back again, and we're back for some coding. Going to be looking at getting that new kind of level flow / spawn pattern in place, so might be a little technical today. We'll see how that goes today. But before we do, let's check in with the kitties. We do have Sky and Sammy laying on the bed. Ember is on my lap. The others are unaccounted. None visible. What is it, Ember? His lap is insufficient. Shoulder. She gets back scratches. Alright, I think it was still working at the end of last time, so... Ember. No, you moved. I'm gonna stand up behind your head now. Ember communicates through trills. App is a little stuttery today. That's frustrating. Let me try to fix this. Doop. Got a bit of a app issue going on, so bear with me. Hello there, Dorothea. Hello. Why you no working app? Spot some of the others here, though. Yeah, I'm getting an unusual amount of stutter here. Hopefully I can fix this. Give me a moment, folks. As is tradition, vtuber scuff. Getting some real hang on my tracking, which is a problem. Oh, what's going on? Well, here, let me put something on in the background, folks. If you recall last time, we got our new map rendering in place. And we've got the performance going relatively well. I say relatively because most of our stuff is stress test territory at this point. So again, our tracking is busted at the moment. I am working to fix it. It's going on. Bear with me. Bear with me. Definitely having some problems. Not that one. You can't see what I'm doing, but trust me, there's a lot of buttons being pressed here. Shut down a couple of more things. Witness the pattern while we tamper here. Do that one. Okay, come on. Work, you, work. Hopefully I can continue while still using the model today, but we'll see. Oh, okay, we have a full tracking problem here. Where is the problem living? That is the question. I have an idea of about where. Unfortunately, Cruel, I'm working on getting that functional again. Something has broken, and it is fresh and annoying. As it is wont to do. So I am, putting up the distraction feed here. The GPU that would be running this is not under stress. I am tempted to believe network issue at the moment. A very particular subnetwork. That's not transmitting as much I would expect, which is very weird, but then again, shouldn't be transmitting a lot. Might have to figure out an alternate way to hook this one up. That would be irritating to have to do right now. What would be a way to go about this? I thought this problem had been solved, but it would seem not. Perhaps solved by coincidence. What can I do to fix this? Well, while I'm poking things, the idea that I had for the stream today was to, what would it be? Start the new spawning pattern. So the spawning that we've been doing has been timer based. Every so often do this thing, which is still technically going to be true. It's still a, after this amount of time, potentially repeat, but we want to add some complexity in there. Because the new flow that we're dealing with, noteworthy is that the screen size that we're dealing with is way bigger than I would probably use. So this would be about as big as the screen would be. What I may end up doing is moving some of the UI to the bottom and claiming some of that space. So for health bar, any other indicators, put that towards the bottom of the screen. But we would be working in sort of a side-scrolling pattern. So there would not be really any vertical give on the screen. That may change later, but the general goal would be to have the screen relatively fixed in flow, and that the player would move largely left to right. With the goal being that you would be presented with waves or groupings of enemies. So the kind of thing that you'd expect to see in a brawler or a shoot 'em up, where there are periodic either triggered waves of enemies or moments where you have to stop and fight those waves, or perhaps even spawners that would appear on the field. And that's kind of what I'm tempted to deal with, is that there would be things in the world that would start emitting enemies. Whether those things would be destroyed or just they would be emptied out. You know, if you beat enough of the enemies that come out of it, it stops. With that being a core scoring mechanism, is clearing the again, either the emptying the spawners, whether through destruction or through count of enemies. That moves us away from a lot of the kind of baked-in conceits of the Bullet Heaven or Survivors games, where the general flow of play is that you are encouraged to move entirely because you want to pick up items that drop, so gems in the field. But picking up doodads it often results in gameplay mechanic necessities. So one of the most common ones is pickup radius, where that exists entirely because the game wants you to move. There are games that go overboard with that, where certain upgrades remove that necessity entirely and just let the objects be picked up instantly, or that the range can get so big that you don't have to move much at all. which from an upgrade perspective is good, but it's an upgrade that only exists because of those pickups, and those pickups are an obligatory portion of the game. And I want to avoid any upgrades that would feel obligatory or would feel entirely quality of life. Now, you can negate some of that by having a wider than expected pickup radius, but again, we'd just be combating one of our mechanics that, oh, there must be a gem, so you must pick up a gem. And that not what I want. So, again, we're going to be working with some different metrics. We're going to look at 2 of them initially, and that's just number of enemies defeated and, more importantly, number of objectives cleared, number of locations cleared. There's nothing that says the player has to stop and clear locations, and if the player's weaponry has not reached a point where they're easily clearing the enemies, then it may be to their advantage to just keep running. But if they're not clearing objectives, they're not getting as many points for upgrades. And that can lead you into a death spiral, and that's still a mechanic or a gameplay flow that we want to have, is that you are encouraged to get stronger. That is an important aspect. Surviving, not being taken out of the game, gives you opportunities to get stronger. Maybe you just need that one extra upgrade, and clearing a level is going to give you an upgrade. So maybe if you clear the level, you'll get that one key factor that then lets you start scaling or, fully ramping, which would be good. So that's what I'm trying to facilitate here. So to do that, right, like I said, right now our spawners are entirely what entity to spawn, what traits to add to it, when to start spawning, when to stop, and how much to spawn. So right now, the weapon configuration has these as added elements on top of the defaults of the yarn ball. And those are set to spawn once every second, originating at the player, and to do so indefinitely once the weapon exists. Cool. Hello, Sky. But we don't currently have that pattern. So one way to get around this is to further encapsulate the spawner concept, and to have it where we just pass delta to them and let them do their thing. Some of them are going to look for player proximity. Maybe we'll just put a collision bubble on an entity and say it looks for player. If it hits the player, it disables its collision and starts doing its thing. We will need to have some mechanism for it to stop spawning if the player gets past it. That's not too much of an issue, though. If we make it an entity in the world, once it gets out of a certain radius, we'll cull it. And since the player can't backtrack, we don't have to worry that the player runs past it, then runs back, or runs to it and then backs up enough to despawn it. So we should be good there. That implies that a spawner can have an associated entity, which isn't a big deal to incorporate. We just have a basic spawner entity, which may or may not have a sprite, and have it put into place. trying to simultaneously work on the avatar issue while explaining this. So again, if you're not seeing the avatar, known issue working on it. Hey, Fluff. Constructive criticism is always welcome. You know, if you got thoughts, it's good to hear them. Keeping in mind, a lot of the, I am aware a lot of the art is not ready. Doesn't mean I don't want to hear it. It's just be aware that none of this is really final except for, I believe, the core character model and probably some of the weapon art. Going on with this. This doesn't need to be that much of a little purple blue thing. Now, do you mean wait, like on the screen or the weaponry? The little bouncing balls? Which one? I use a lot of cyan pink in the art. Bouncing blobs? Oh, the ball with a tail, yes. That is meant to be a yarn ball. Could be going along with this one. Other things could be interfering to create this issue. Yes, the initial set of weaponry, Fluff, is all going to be stereotypical cat toy stuff. And again, I'm kind of vamping for time here. My model face tracking is broken right now. I would say it is because of something else, but you know, the thing, but it's not the thing. Yeah, I would like to set it up so that when the game is paused, that I get the sprites paused too. Come here, you. You ask that frequently, Cruel, but I'm not clear on what you're really looking for in an answer from. Will this affect the lore? You ask that, at least in my view, pseudo randomly, and the lore is the backstory of it. So unless there is new adjacent backstory stuff, probably not. Is that some sorcery happen? Maybe? Let's try it out. Loading. Have to try launching some of these as admin and see if it works. But again, vtuber scuff happening. Okay, now connect. Maybe. Okay. I don't know what happened, but something happened. Okie dokie. We're gonna hope that sticks. Eye tracking has gone a little off, but that will have to work for now. Yeah. Eyes. This guy has joined me on my lap, so he needs head scratches. Okay. Let's hop on over to our world state. Solve those. Okay, so our default world state handler mechanical cats, yo. Let's see. So right now, the world state keeps track of a period of time. But if we look at our world events, so we have a start time and an end time, and that's baked into the list items. But this, to me, at this point, is more intrinsic to a timed world event. So the world event has some indication that it should start and stop at a time moment. But that doesn't have to be true for every world event. Entity spawners being one possibility of them. But that could also be a specific type of thing that is doing the spawning. I could bake it into all spawn list items still. I am not familiar with Sword and Sandals. Cool. Can't say I've heard of it. How do we want to do this? So if we have a world event, we could have a series of values in a world event as to how it operates. But that still leaves us with the problem of what the world event should do. What I don't want is to have a whole lot of extraneous logic built into them that they don't really need. So if I look at the spawners as entities that would be put on the field and would do their thing, maybe they have proximity, maybe they have any number of elements, then I don't necessarily want they could just be entities. They could just be entities. We would need a way of knowing when to spawn them. But if all spawn points were effectively entities, that a world event knows that once I hit this part of the world, I want to spawn these. Do I take proper sleep? Sometimes. That's a regular problem I have. Is very, very irregular and unpredictable sleeping patterns. It is something that I work on. It's something that I've been working on for years. We work through it. Okay, if we treat spawn points as entities, so things in the world, then we remove some of the trickiness of our current spawn pattern. So if, for example, we look at our current pattern, let's just open this up. Just a moment here, let's hunt it down. There's a thing that I'm working on that I don't want to reveal up front. I need to make sure that I don't reveal it. Save this. Put that in one of the drives here. What's that? Okay. So there's our world map, but that's not really what we're looking for. Should have a world event list somewhere. So there's our world map. And that just has textures. Where are we loading our event list? Let's hunt it down. I've mentioned before that pretty much the entirety of this lives in my head. You are seeing a side effect of that in play. And that's, what if I forget? There is a lot of hacky code in place. Let's see. There's a point at which we add the world state. Here we set the level. We're getting level okay, that's where we hit it. Level test. Well, I'm glad that's working that way, Floff. That's actually something that I'm pleased to hear that is happening with some folks, is that in watching along, they decide, you know what, I want to do that sort of thing too. And that's great. That's great. This whole operation for me is kind of chasing something that I wanted to do for quite a while, and it kicked off with just taking that first step. Like, let's do it. Okay, this is where we set up our world event list. Each of these is a line item in that list. If instead world event list items had a location and it's where they need to be placed in the world, and then that entity can do all the stuff that we need. I kind of like that. So then as soon as the entity exists is when it starts. Its end state can be behaviorally stopped, its lifespan. It can also be a number of times that I spawn something until I get removed, that sort of stuff. So what would we do for this? So then that begs the question of how do we know when to spawn them and where to put them? To make this work well, we need to be able to relatively precisely place the objects. Because, for example, if we want to put a door on a building and have enemies spill out of the door, and that door eventually stops working. We can just leave it there, but this guy quit it. They periodically see things on shelves and like want to poke them. Yeah, I'm watching you. I'm watching you. Okay, where to put them and when to put them there. So one possibility is that we do it on chunk load, but that's something that programmatically happens. We could hard code the logic for loading chunks, but that reduces our flexibility. It's not something that we can say, hey, this system is running at good performance, load more of the map at once, or similar, without potentially disrupting the world map. If we know how far away the player can see, we have an idea as to whether the chunk is being loaded because particular map portions have been loaded. If we had logic for saying this map portion has been loaded, is there anything inside this that would be relevant? That could work. It would... we still need an efficient way to go about it, because we have an arbitrary list. Which can make it so that having the chunks be fixed in size is useful to us. Because then we could go through and say, all right, we know that this would be in chunk 1. We get that out of, like, level map here. But we don't know the scale of the world until we've loaded this image. So that puts us in a position of saying these spawners need to be in this position. And we could say we'll need to figure out how to precisely place them. But the current thought is we change the spawners to be entities. The world events put an entity in the world that, as long as that entity exists, will have a behavior that causes it to spawn enemies. So it gets a delta, it looks and sees, hey, I have a spawn a given enemy every so often behavior loaded in, I'ma do that. Which we could, again, have like a JSON entity loaded for it. Wonder how long it's going to be until I start loading more JSON than my my comma delimited files. For reference, we started with JSON files and I moved away from them because it was becoming a burden to maintain them. I couldn't group them well. Maybe if I come up with a wrapper class for my JSON objects, then I could set that up and just have them emitted when they're loaded. But that creates its own problems. We'll burn that bridge after we cross it. Okay, what do we do? Because this basic framework would work, as in we're going to take this entity, we're going to add these behaviors to it, and then we need to put it somewhere. Spawn point moves away in this regard, and then instead we have a behavior, and that behavior is spawn around the player or spawn off the edge of the camera. We can have the entity moving as well. So the spawn point could be off camera, like sliding up and down on screen, to artificially create a kind of wave motion spawn. The enemies aren't actually moving in a wave in that regard. They're just appearing in a wave pattern. Yeah. So that's where we want to get. So it's how do we trigger the spawn based on location? We could have proximity areas to it with enemies with it not being a matter of this entity gets removed. It's that the entity gets activated once it's within range and deactivated once it goes out of range again. That creates kind of a new class of entity. This is one that doesn't get purged, but that's that creates another kind of global question. How do we handle efficiently the idea that an entity needs to get removed once it's outside of a certain bubble? If an entity spawns inside of a collision zone, it doesn't collide with it. It's the same logic that prevents like rapid-fire repeat collisions when objects are overlapping each other. I'm not 100% worried about those because if a collision results in an entity being removed, it removes it before the collision processing would happen on the subsequent step. If it gets hit again, then we can either have iframes to negate the hit, or we can just accept it frame by frame by frame, especially since our physics frames are fixed in length. Or I'm sorry, the delta is fixed. So, from the world's perspective, it is 1/30th of a second. We could have, that gives us an idea of you need X physics ticks before another collision can happen. And they are always of a given length. which should mean that we could look at the Godot side. Let me see if there's a property for that. Let's go to our test bed. Where did I put that? There it is. Under test bed. Okay, test bed currently has the tile map layer, which we don't need for our testing purposes. Just need to delete. There we go. Yep, I'm fine with that. Okay, we are going to add a child. We're going to add an area. Test bed. This scene never appears in the game, and it only exists in the project so I can do this. So there's a lot of logic in Godot, or at least Godot is set up so that there's a real kind of newbie-friendly pattern to it, and that's I can go in and I could make the entire game within this editor right here. There's scripting language that the Godot editor uses. There is the node and scene structure. I could have the entire game fully defined within this editor. You know, what the levels look like, how the player moves, all of that stuff. I do not use GDScript right now, Fluff, largely because I want more precise control. And kind of the next tier of that is generally going to C#. So you could have GDScript, and in GDScript you could instead be doing things like touching the Godot servers directly. So instead of creating an Area 2D node, and then in that node creating a shape, that kind of thing. Instead you could say, hey, physics server, there is an area here. Physics server, this area contains this shape. That is faster and more efficient if you do it right. But it's also a great deal of hassle to do it right. The C# code, there is a jump that happens between the Godot logic, the GDScript level, or the Godot level, and the C# level. There is a price to doing that. But C# is generally going to be better at brute computation, which I'm doing a lot of. There's a whole lot of iterate over all of the objects and see if they want to do anything kind of stuff happening. I could mitigate some of that with having the entities handle delta themselves, but that removes some of the control over the waves of stuff. Then in C# you can also interact directly with the servers instead. If you wanted to go further, you can go into C++, but that is yet another layer of complexity added onto it. I mentioned it before, learning code in C++ is good for educational purposes, but there are things that you need to do in C++ that you don't need to do in a great many other languages, because many other languages are higher level than C++. Memory management and garbage collection are things that, for the most part, you must do manually in C++, and that is a whole learning thing. Hey there, Valentine. Doing well. And yes, it is that C++ can cause sanity damage. In C++, access violation is generally fatal, and you run into the one of the most glorious of errors, and that is segment fault. So your error handling has to be much more robust and fiddly. On and on and on. There's a trade-off for the power. Once you get it rolling, though, fantastic. But do you need that? That is always the question. A great deal of this project is a learning project, so there's nothing that says a future project of mine wouldn't touch C++. And who knows, down the road it might be, you know what, I want that extra performance. Let's rip up the floorboards and go at it again. Yeah, I did a majority of my education in programming in C++, and I very happily turned away to other languages when I had the opportunity. But there is still a lingering... that there are aspects of my code that you can see the origins of learning C++ at kind of the crest of the object-oriented is the new hotness structure. Now, that said, let me pull up a shader. Being comfortable in languages like C++, there is an extra thing in game dev that can help you with, or that you will benefit from. Where it should be in rendering code. I should still have that around. Rendering, entity rendering. Do I still have the shader a lot? Map rendering. Shader based. Shader. Map rendering shader. So this is a Godot shader, but it shares a lot of the patterns that you would expect out of more generic shader language. But if you look, a lot of the conventions for the existing languages like your C and your Godot are here, but there are additional behaviors that you would expect more out of something like C. Allocating the memory for these things to the right sizes is very important, because when you load them into the graphics the graphics card, it needs to be precise. The memory needs to be organized into the right size, the right order, the right shape. I ran into that before where, because of the way the memory is allocated, a structure did not have the right shape, and because of that, it didn't have the data values loaded into the right portions of memory, which meant that the values of those variables were scrambled. Hey there, Lore. Put another way, it's an absolute nightmare if you don't get the memory allocation proper. And that necessitates things like knowing the memory size of a variable, knowing the sequence that those variables are going to be set up inside memory, and then optimizing that sort of box-fitting algorithm to make sure that the variables appear in the right shape, because if they don't, you're gonna have a bad time. I don't have the entity shader here anymore, which is kind of a shame. Oh, maybe I do. Oh, no, this is the shadow shader. Now, memory leaks are not unique to things like C#. I'm sorry, C++. Memory leaks can happen everywhere. It's just you get different flavors of how you can cause the memory leak once you're messing with the memory directly. You also, though, you get to see why the memory leak is happening if you learn that sort of element, knowing that every time I resize an array, depending on how the language allocates that array, that like list of data, I might be eating up a chunk of memory that has that is now awkwardly shaped and placed. You get more problems with that with something like Java, where you have a VM, where you essentially have a code execution environment that has particular resources allocated to it, but you can get that anywhere. So let's say I have a series of size 10 arrays and a series of size 1 variables. I load up a function, I allocate the array, and I allocate one variable. So now I have potentially, hypothetically, it doesn't always end up this way, I have 10 and then 1, so I have 11. Then maybe I recurse into it because I want to cause problems, or I'm just iterating over that and I need another size 10. So on the 12th slot, I start a new 10. But then I don't need that first 10. So I get rid of that 10. I now have a 10, a 1, and a 10. But that 10, maybe I allocated that first 10, the second 10, remove the first 10. Now I have a space of 10 open at the beginning, and I need another 1 size variable. So I pop that in the 10. So I have a 1, 9 empty, a 1, and a 10. Well, that 9 space can only fit 1s, and now the memory is starting to get fragmented. Back in the olden days, we used to have something called disk defragmentation, which you had to do very frequently. You sometimes do now, but operating systems are a little more efficient about how they go around sliding the boxes here and there. You can still have it happen, but you don't have to do it every month or something like that anymore. Just to keep your memory, your disk drive from going out of control. But you run into those same problems, so you might need to build an infrastructure around your memory management, which is extra overhead. You can take open source libraries for that kind of thing, and maybe your project, your team already has that kind of thing, which makes it quote-unquote free. But everything has a price. The more power you have in code, the more power you have to exercise. But yeah. Okay, we had an area 2D. Now we're going to add a collision shape. So the game Satisfactory has a little game that you can play. It's largely meaningless. It's just a little game on the computer in like the starting building that you can mess with. And it's a box packing algorithm. You have a bunch of Tetris pieces, and you want to fit as many of them as you can in a limited space. That is a classic programming logic exercise, is how efficiently can you write an algorithm that maximizes the number of things that you can fit into a space, and the various ways that you do it. We're just about on the hour mark, so quick break and then we'll resume. And we're back. Beverage. Let's see, we have Sky, we have Ember in the tree. We have Mason and Sammy there. To see if there are any other. Act choke. I try to time things so that the Twitch ads don't interfere, but sometimes it don't work. Alright, we have a collision shape. Just make it a circle. It's not a one-way collision. Collision layer. I will need to make sure that when I'm creating shapes that I remove a lot of this stuff. These are anything that doesn't need to be here can be pulled out. Like, if I don't care that the mouse is moving over it, I don't want pickable to be on. In a similar way, if a collision space doesn't run into things. So, it's noteworthy that you have monitoring and monitorable. So, when I'm monitoring, I'm looking for things that I could collide with. When I'm monitorable, things that are looking can see me. So if I know that a particular area has nothing that it collides with that it's looking for, I can remove monitoring. And culling that kind of stuff can help with performance. It's things you're not checking. Hot chocolate does sound pretty good. So let's see. We need... It's not any of that. Not here. Settings. Physics. Let me see what Twitch is saying here. Nothing went red, but there's always the possibility of a hiccup, you know? Okay, let's see here. Rule making if every gun part if every part of a 3D model is a separate thing, there's an overhead to rendering all of those individual things. And you are likely to have you're likely to result in parts of the model that aren't always visible. needing to be rendered as it's a separate thing now. So since since that implies a modularity, you need to have more surfaces visible. Whereas if it's a single object, there's kind of smoke and mirrors you can use to reduce the number of surfaces and like textured areas that you would need to deal with. You have to balance that against the idea that if you're going to use the exact same series of parts on a regular basis, then maybe it will save you some time. And then you can use trickery to hide the spots that wouldn't be visible no matter what it's attached to. So this can result in more collisions. Max contact separation. So this is there's a distance between them that is required before a new collision is registered. So if I'm touching a wall, I'll get the first collision. But if my model is still directly touching that wall, this max separation is an indication of the recycle and the max separation are indications of how long until I say I've collided with the wall again. Maybe I never do because I'm still touching it. But a good example would potentially be a damaging surface. So if I'm touching a hot surface, how frequently does the I'm touching a hot surface happen? Is it once and then you keep track of it hasn't stopped yet? Or is it once every time a collision is registered? And that could be I'm standing on it, I'm still standing on it, kind of thing. The reason I bring it up is that we could have entities that could spawn within a bubble, and that there is a player visibility radius that says as soon as this hits it, then reveal the object, such that would still necessitate that we be able to place something with a collision zone further out. Which just leads me to believe that we should probably just put all of the enemy spawners in the field with collision zones that say that are I'm a spawner collision zone. If you hit this, the collision zone turns off. That leaves us with just the issue of placing them initially. Okay. Okay. Hello, Sky. Ember's looking at me. Okay. So let's plot that out a little bit. Let's look at one of our entities. Hey, that is the shape of the entity. We could just use circles for these. I'll need to have a new category for the entity. Category is it an enemy? Is it a player? That kind of thing. That changes the collision mask. It wouldn't have health per se. Some of them will. But they will potentially have effects on them that are things like it's invulnerable until this state kind of stuff. I have a visual key, but that could lead to problems if we go down that road. We'll still need to look into that. Many of them would potentially have no shadow, just to avoid oddities. If we have... I could have logic that I bake into a behavior to control whether an entity goes away when the player is too far from it. I could make that intrinsic to a type, that some things don't go away when the player is too far from it. You know, world decals and the like stick around, so that I don't have to keep recreating them when the player gets near them. Which could create overhead, but I think that's okay. We have plenty of room for that kind of overhead. Which means entities would have, as an early part of their flow of events, if I'm too far away from the player, get rid of me. So if the default is not to go away, they would have a check that says, should I go away because I'm too far away from the player? If I am, do a check and see how far from the player am I. Go away if so. I feel like that's basic enough that we could just put it into the entity as a flag that is should I go away if the player is too far away, kind of thing. Not sure what I would call it, but effectively it is it's a player bound one or something like that, so that only if that is true, and it will be true by default, should we remove that we would remove that entity if they get out of the target radius. Okay, so let's look at where in the code we're hiding that. Entity, base entity manager. There's our screen size. Which we aren't using here. Hello, Ember. Here we go. We have an arbitrary length currently. We have magic numbers. This is going to be a fun thing that I have to do later. Is hunt magic numbers. Move them to places where I can, like, move them to the startup resource so I can control it by a sliding scale kind of thing. You must be at least this close before you go away. So if instead of checking that right here, that for each entity I'm going to do the player to entity check here. And I could calculate this number up front so that I'm not constantly doing this math. This is cheap. This would actually resolve to a constant, I believe. So, anyway. So we do a if entity dot, player bound or something like that. And this. So if the entity isn't player bound, we never do the length check. So let's put that in there. It's part of entity. An entity category. So this is the type that I was referring to. So that blob has a type of 4. It's an enemy. Technically, there's nothing stopping an entity from having multiple of these. So I could OR them together. That would create a hot mess, though. So I'm just making this a bit field for practicality's sake. Right now we're setting it up so that, hey, what category of thing are you? If you are, return this bit field. Where am I setting that? This says its category is 4, which lines up with enemies, but this is a bucket control. Yeah, this... Why am I doing it that way? Where am I even using this? Like these. Where do these get used? We have from string. But am I ever actually... Okay, that's a problem for future Newt. That guy can deal with it. I'm going to say that most commonly the entities that will exist in the world, the most numerous types, are the ones that are player bound. Damn. I always need sleep gruel. It's a perpetual state. Just all the time. Public Boolean. That's equal to true. Long name, but is build message. Move you up here. You out. All JSON ignored. Okay. Here, we build it, handle messages. Ah, it's in the manager. That's right. Okay. We're just going to head this off. That's simple math. We'll leave it for now. Player proximity bound. And that. What this means is that we're only checking entities that are flagged as they need to be within range of the player. This will let me exclude this calculation. This is not the expensive version. The more expensive version is length, or distance to, that kind of thing, because that requires a square root calculation. From an individual operation perspective, this is not expensive, but doing it a couple thousand times, 30 times a second, is not inexpensive. Hey there, Daniel. Welcome. Okay, so we're going to run this again. We're going to run it on the Godot side. Start that. Pause. We go back over into the Godot editor. We go to our remote tree. Camera. And we set our zoom to be 0.5. Yeah, let's set it further. 0.25. I need the player to be a little faster in order for this to be really relevant. Okay, you can see little dots going away. The yarn balls go away when they get far enough left. Let's make more of them to make it a little more apparent. So the little dots here will start to go away when we get far enough out. That's what we're looking for, and we can make this more aggressive to further reduce the number of things that exist in the world at any given time. We're also going to be able to have an additional thing in here that could be like recycle the entity or something like that. But for now, we're just removing them. Eventually, I do want to circle back around to object caching for efficiency. One of the things that you can do is, like right now, I'm caching some of the Godot nodes for visual elements, because it's hard to know up front which visual elements I may or may not need at any given time. Again, we might have to circle back around to that as well. But when I create a spawner, I know what that spawner can create. And we will very quickly have an idea of how many it creates per unit time, like per second or something like that. So what we could do is either set a fixed variable or have it calculated. I would probably set a fixed variable and say pre-create this many of them. When one of them goes away, we intercept that. We keep it around. We reset it, we keep it around, and when we need to do it again, we load from that queue first. We don't remake them. We don't make new ones, which can save us some data. But the biggest savings for that would be visual nodes. Anything that has to be rendered in Godot, so the sprites and what have you. Again, we might be able to get away with that, where once we have made one, we keep a queue of them around. Okay, so we have the idea of player proximity bound now. If, hypothetically, we go into our yarn ball now, bullet, and we're going to go to the end of bullet yarn ball. We're going to cause a mess here. And we're going to have to fight with it for a moment. It is text. Okay, so now when I run it, the yarn balls should not go away. Oops, gotta run it in Godot. Start, pause, go back out, switch to remote, open the game, open the camera, set the zoom to 0.25 so we can really see it. And we make a whole bunch of them so that we can see them go away. Working. Oh, okay, I'm not doing this test correctly. Let's look at our base entity manager. End step, we do handle message end step on the entity. Okay, we have a speed number in entity. It's our entity category. Set. Okay, now we're going to go into our yarn ball again, and we're going to say speed is 192. By default, speed is about 1 square per second. That's not looking all that different. Fraction of speed. Speed should be... Okay. Here we continue. We emit a yarn ball. Oh. It's our copy constructor. Okay, they're moving much faster now. Good. Going to have to do a commit real quick because we're touching a lot of stuff. So we've doubled the speed of the yarn balls at the moment. The one screen, they should go away around here. Okay, that's about right. Just for giggles. If we go back in here and we reset this to 1, you can see the spin is much faster now. And we can exacerbate that even further. We could say 384. Make sure that loaded. Okay. This is 4x speed for the yarn balls. Much more of a buzzsaw now, because at any given moment, it's very likely that there is a yarn ball hitting the ground. But it also makes the center much more vulnerable because once they're past it, the yarn balls leave the center very, very quickly. And again, as we saw last time, the game will slow down visually, but processing-wise, we're still actually getting a reasonable number, and by reasonable, I mean plural, frames per second. Pretty much. The 30th of a frame per second makes it a lot harder for an enemy to dodge the a collision by moving fast and going through it. But the nature of the yarn balls is such that if the player is moving, let's turn off the blast wave. We get a neat visual effect when the player moves. Well, actually, we normally would. But it is mitigated by the speed of the yarn ball in this case. The yarn ball is able to catch up to the player more easily, but you should see kind of a thicker edge of the ring kind of wobbling around, where it is falling behind the player and gets towed to catch up, creating a sort of like wobbling ellipse instead of a circle. Be sure I took that off. Then again, the world ticks are happening much, 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 much slower than normal. There we go. So, if you watch, you can see it's kind of a twisting oval instead of just a circle. But if I stop, it'll start to settle. The speed is the thing that controls this, as far as how it looks and how it's behaving. It's going to take it a while before it would stabilize again. Actually, I don't know if it will stabilize, if for no other reason than the projectiles are moving that quickly. You can get kind of a slingshot effect. The pull for the circle is still very powerful, though. So if we let it break out of the circle, and we instead make them move in loops, little loop-de-loops, enemy coverage is going to plummet here. As will coherency of the movement of the things. Actually, we're seeing the other side of it is that whereas the spiral is hard to pierce because everything in the circle is moving so quickly that there's a high likelihood that a ball will strike the ground, we can see blobs getting past this, but everything's moving so fast that you still have a lot of coverage of ball hitting ground at any given point. Let's put track random enemy on this. If a tracking projectile loses its target, it goes random. Or at least it keeps moving in the direction that it was going at the time. And additionally, the yarn ball moves in a straight line towards a given target at the time it was launched. It is possible that once that launch happened, that the target has either been removed or has since moved into a position that is counter to that initial vector. So you can get oppositional vectors. I do want to make sure that I am passing the entity down the chain properly. That if the first one says move in a straight line, oh, okay, no. But if it says move in a straight line towards this target, we don't want it to subsequently decide on a completely separate target. This is double random direction. I'm sorry. This is a random direction towards a given target paired with a random direction. So we're getting variable speed and direction. Kind of a seething fountain in the center. Okay, but that was in service of getting to here. Discard the testbed changes. Our entity changes are... We'll leave that here for now. And we'll commit that. Okay. So we have distance collision, which means we have the ability to spawn an entity that does not get removed by distance. So what I want to do is when the world is created, excuse me, I want to create a series of entities that represent when spawning should happen. When that entity is, the initial collision happens, then we can change that entity to actually be removed when it's out of range. So it detects a collision with a player. As soon as that happens, it ceases to care about the player's colliding with it, and instead cares about if it leaves the radius of player influence. So as soon as the player gets within range, it activates and starts doing its thing. But once it's activated, if the player leaves effective range of it, it just goes away. Okay. We can work with this. So we're going to create an entity what do that. Go in, we're going to copy bullet. Have spawners already. I don't. Okay, good. Let's check some of the other things. Level has them hard to find. Spawn point and spawn list. Spawn list I don't think we're using anymore. Because, yeah. We do need to clean that category out as well. Let's make a new entity category. Be in here. I don't know if I'm using these. I need to revisit this. we are going to need to add an entity type such that we need to override this. Because this is going to be a special type of entity. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So it is a spawner, which makes it a type 32. We'll have to check the collision logic as well to make sure we get the collider right. Oh, excuse me. All right. What? Mason will come up and squeak at me and then begin clawing at the back of my arm if he wants attention. He wants real intensive back and belly scratches. There we go. No, no. It says you stopped. Collider. There's a point at which we're going to set the mask, and I need to make sure I get that right. So from string, midi bound, here we go. Mason will intervene for attention now and again. A lot of them do. The nature of cat ownership. Spawner, it collides with player. So the spawner runs into the player. So then when we're defining this thing, we need to make sure that we have a collider type for it. Okay, we want a different type of collider for this, which will be an extension of circle. have it in the startup resources. Let's double check. It's not part of the startup resource. That's something that should be magic numbers. Magic number is a hard-coded number that is not defined elsewhere. So right here I have 32. I'm defining that as the default radius, but the question becomes, is 32 special in some way? Why is this the default? If I have to change that number, does that have any ramifications for anything else? Similarly, I'm setting this to 1920, which is the equivalent of a screen and a half, is what I'm saying here. That would be... So the player is on a screen, the width 1920. 1920 by 1080 is the fixed size of the game. It will scale accordingly. If I take that and I say that's the radius of the circle, then I'm going to go from the center of the screen to the edge of the screen to the center of the next screen, essentially. But this is only accurate in that way if the screen size that the game is scaling to is 1920. Again, this is a window that emulates that. The game assumes that it's going to be able to run within a 16 by 9 box on the screen, borderless. And it will scale its world accordingly. When you get into assembly cruel, it's hard not to have magic numbers. It's possible to not have magic numbers, but you're going to have to do a lot of song and dance for it. Because when you're dealing with assembly, you're doing a lot of load this value into this portion of memory, fetch this value from this portion of memory. So you would have an area in memory that you devoted to where your constant values are. And you would fetch them from that, if you wanted to avoid that scenario. Entity Collider Spawner doesn't need anything because it hard overrides the radius to this value before initializing. It will call base initialize, which is the initialization for a circle. So you can set the radius, it will default to 32, but we are going to purge that value out before we get to here. We're going to replace it. Kind of hacky. Again, it's magic number territory, but I can ultimately move that number elsewhere so that there is like a game settings server somewhere that object upon loading will get and be able to extract that number, so that if I need to change what the base resolution and scaling is, I can go get that. But for now, our 1 hour mark is coming up. I will be right back. And remember, folks, if you like what you see and would like to see more so far, then remember to like, follow, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. I will be back in a couple of minutes. back about 30 seconds. The Twitch folks should be able to hear again. Okay, so we have a spawner collider now, which means we can go into our spawner category. Now we're going to have to figure out, we're going to have to make sure that we can get collisions as soon as it appears. We'll leave the bullet explosion there, no shadow. The collider spawner will have no health data. Value pair, and this is going to be player. That is a string. Oh, no, the server in this case in a sort of the name of the coding pattern. In this case, it's a thing that drives the code logic. So I have the thing that manages all of the entities. It's still local. We're not dealing with networking client server. This is code server. Okay, so we have a timer behavior here. I have not done any sort of networking logic. If I were to add client-server kind of stuff, I would start with very simplistic stuff using the built-in Godot client-server networking architecture and go from there. Refining as needed. Eventually you run into circumstances where you need to account for things like malicious clients. And that's very early on. It's something that you want to consider, but you know, putting a toe in the water would be starting with just the baked in kind of stuff. Okay, this puts us in a circumstance where what we want to do is have elements of this world state item copied over. So I have a world event, I have a start time, I have an end time. Don't care about that. We're looking at world event. Okay. So I can have things like a frequency, I can have an entity, but we should be able to get away with a couple of things. And for now, that is going to be some sort of trigger, which could be a gate on the behavior. Is every so often toggle. Do I have a gate for that already? We could add that to timer gate and make it so it's a toggle state. We could make it so it's a once every so often, which removes the idea of frequency but hard codes it. Which I don't really like. So let's just have a behavior for that. So I'd like to keep gates as conditionals and not as flows. Hello, Stiggy. Welcome. Beverage. So instead we'll add a behavior. We have multiplier weapon entity, which isn't what we're actually looking for there. Multiplier entity. Which is given an entity up front during its processing here. "20-year-old tech, what are you trying to mod there, Stiggy?" An iPod? What are you going to try to make it do? We talking the old, like, you know, single color style, or, you know, one with a more complex display that you might wire a micro... Oh. Oh, the mechanical, wow. That's going to be interesting. I feel like that's a pretty accurate statement across an entire panoply of technology and kind of fields there, Stiggy. If you've got the if you've got the will to understand what you're doing and practice a bit, there's all kinds of stuff you can accomplish with just a soldering iron. Look at our multipliers here. Ever set entity here? Yep, we can hard code entity. Okay, so we would be making a special type of multiplier that would accept an entity, a spawn point. Yeah, entities and spawn points. Hey, son. Hey, son. Buddy. This is Godot. This is C# into Godot. So I have it rigged up so that if I run the project, it will execute the Godot, the corresponding Godot project. And Godot is set up to use a bridge between its kind of engine and the C# libraries. There's a cost to crossing the bridge, but it lets me do all of the faster computation that you can get out of things like C# versus GD script. I just like operating in C# in Visual Studio over GD script in Godot. So there's that. I was mentioning before, hey, maybe in a future project I might look at the C++ variant, but not for now. We would need the full battery of things that are in the world event right now. So let's close a bunch of stuff up here. Let's get the particular world event that we want. Yeah. Okay, so we have a spawn point, the behavior. This has list of entities, but quite frankly... Oh, let me see here. I missed a few messages. You mean the ones where you're describing which things you could do, or... Well, let me see if it's not feeding. It seems to be coming through. Not clear what I missed there. Oh! Are you saying that on the same battery that you can make it last longer? Or that with an expanded battery within the existing housing, you could make it last longer there, Stiggy? We could change this just to be a catalog name converter for entity. We still use behaviors and spawn. So let's just take all of this. Okay, we need a new multiplier, though. I mean, battery tech has advanced quite a bit since 2005, Stiggy. For one, it's not like you're always risking having a phosphorus grenade in your pocket. It really says something when we still have folks that are like, yeah, that's just it's just such a small risk. It's, well, come on now. It's like, yes, but the small risk is the battery will go into overload and like spray super hot acid everywhere. And that's setting aside the fact that the reaction that kind of battery does slowly erodes because of the kind of random nature of the crystal formation. Which is part of the reason that the less well-constructed ones could explode. Because that random crystal formation could eventually create a short. You ever encountered somebody that uses laptops like on their lap so frequently that they effectively have a cooked layer of skin, almost like a leathery surface to their skin? Like a super sunburn? You know, not the radiation part, but the cooking spot type. Yeah, it's generally that they would lay the surface of the laptop, and the laptop's venting is like right on the bottom, so it's not getting... The cheap work laptops are not getting the amount of cooling that they need, so they're starting to shed heat all around the bottom of them. And then add to the fact that the person, you know, that your skin and pants are generally not a rigid, non-thermally conductive surface. So now you have a slowly heating thing pressed into a porous surface. Hey there, Tibbs. Welcome, welcome. Okay, we need a new multiplier. Mass extends multiplier spawner. Extends a multiplier, but that's right. Extends multiplier entity. Multiplier entities have an entity, which we copy over. No, they're gonna... This is a multiplier spawner. It is not a multiplier entity, though. It's just a behavior. For the most part, Stiggy, we have, like, technologically, we have all of the bits necessary to pretty much homebrew all kinds of hardware, you know, systems and whatnot. But there's a lot of industry pressure to prevent that. It's the same sort of pressure and momentum that goes into preventing private and commercial repair work outside of first party. If you can build your own doodad, then you don't need to buy the expensive doodad that they sell. Don't even know that I want to call these multipliers. Yeah, we're going to move it. We're going to move you. Spawner behavior is a base type. Yep, planned obsolescence is a thing, Cruel. So, Tibbs, I'm finally getting rolling on the new spawning pattern. And, brain. So what we're doing is we're creating a particular type of entity behavior that once it begins, once that entity starts acting, it will begin to do the sort of spawning logic that we are doing with weapon spawners. This has the possibility of having a ripple effect. And not a bad ripple effect at all. There's a lot we can do with this. A whole lot we can do with this. But for the time being, what we're going to do is once we're going to, at the start of a map, we are going to put a bunch of entities out in space. These entities ignore, by default, initially, they ignore the you're too far away from the player logic. And what they'll do is they are going to look for the player. As soon as they have collided with the player, they activate. They now respect they now use the I'm too far away from the player logic. If the player leaves range of the spawner goes away. The nature of the game will be such that you can't go back, so the only way to leave a spawner is to run past it. Which is okay. We're going to bake that into the reward structure of the game, is ignoring spawners is ignoring points. That is the goal currently. Once that spawner is activated, it starts spitting out creatures based on a behavior chain. So it will have all of the same logic that we have otherwise. Now, we'll need to be cautious of it because things like multipliers being put in these would cause issues. But that's a code maintenance thing. That is a don't do the stupid if you don't want the stupid. Okay, we don't need multiplier spread anymore. We're going to look at entity spawn. So we're going to grab all these. I'm going to have a catalog name converter, which isn't a list, it is just an entity. List of behaviors, list of spawn points. Excellent. And we have a public behavior, this. This is a JSON constructor. Tibbs, this is Godot. Reload from disk. IndieWeb. No, I haven't heard of IndieWeb. First game dev engine that I ever really, robust game dev engine that I ever poked was Unity. Never really went anywhere with it, never really did anything with it other than download it and look at it. Okay, well, to be fair, I made a labyrinth generator, which is just take a grid and use a kind of a pathfinding algorithm to generate a single entry, single exit labyrinth. And then display it on the screen using map tiles. It was a fun little exercise. It's baby's first procedural map generator, you know? Okay. it is kind of interesting watching as tech continues to accelerate as far as the kind of the trend cycle, how we're starting to get things that are, it's kind of backlash to the saturation of high tech. So we had, everybody needs the best smartphone, the bigger smartphone, faster, more, better. And now we're getting a bit of a backlash into, well, I don't want a smartphone. I don't want all these bells and whistles. I'm going to get a flip phone. That kind of thing. In a similar vein, we're getting some of the... We continue to get like small community sites popping up. So instead of relying on like your Facebooks and whatnot, or, whatever your flavor of the day is, you'll have people falling back into smaller community-based systems. For better or for worse, but... One of my favorite little anecdotes is somebody talking about how like they had left their cell phone in their room and somebody was trying to call and really just wanted to get a hold of somebody from the household, but they couldn't find they didn't have the number of anybody else, and the person they were calling directly didn't answer. And this child was talking about that, was like, it would be really useful if there was a phone number that you could call and just anybody in the household could pick it up. Like, everybody would get the call, and that it could always be on. Like, it would just be native to the house, and so you wouldn't need to carry around a phone inside the house. And it was one of those situations where it's like you're describing a landline. We had that. That was a thing that we had and we still have. But it's not just the old is new kind of phenomenon. It's that you get folks that the pace of technology is moving fast enough that you will have folks that in just one generation grow up having not experienced some significant portion of the tech of the prior generation. It can get wild. Just in my time in university, I went from, in my lifetime, I've gone from working with folks using tape backups, 5-inch floppies, 3.5-inch floppies, zip drives, very briefly, thank you, CDs and DVDs and Blu-rays, and like all of that is an anachronism at this point. We are starting to get applications not using, like, this icon here, this purple floppy drive, still exists as the save, even though the reason that it looks that way is entirely because of a ubiquitous storage mechanism at the time. But even finding a floppy disk, let alone a floppy drive, is weird outside of like niche hobbyists. Though some of those hobbyists create hilarious things. There's a YouTube channel that every now and then bubbles up for me, and that is they recreate music using various machinery, and one of the types of machinery they use is floppy disk drives. because they would make very particular noises while reading. Same with like spinning platter drives, all those kind of things. Yeah, that's the one. It's like Flopatron or something like that. And they have steadily added other bits of hardware, electric toothbrushes. What was another bit? Like receipt printers, dot matrix printers. Hell, dot matrix printers. That's another anachronism. And that's the thing, circling back to old tech and taking inspiration from it is actively a good thing, if for no other reason than it provides people with an incentive, or at least gets people looking at prior things and seeing, what did that do? Why don't we do it anymore? And is there something we could do to improve it to make it potentially as good, if not better, than what we have? Because sometimes there are elements of prior things that were really good, but were limited at the time. Graphics enthusiasts are still like pushing for new tech in the CRT area for monitors, because CRTs are very, very low latency comparatively. Unfortunately, the standard form factor for them is gigantic. Just enormous. I remember having desks with metal framework underneath them still bowing slightly under the weight of modern CRTs. Just colossal things. Hello, Wiry. Hello. Okay, we need a copy constructor. Public spawner behavior. Catalogable. Copy. To spawner behavior, then services catalog copy. What? Oh. I mean, could it's always interesting. I joke about it, but you can see in some of my coding patterns where I learned to code in C++. So let me see if I can find one. Not there. Looking for a private or a protected member variable. Not there. There we go. That's because I learned to code in C++ era. I have moved away from the prefix underscores. So, you know, in this case, like L_B. No, it wouldn't be L_B. It would be something else. I can't remember what the prefix for a member variable. L would be local. Maybe that was member as well. Well, I forget. And it is not to my detriment. Behavior. So we get that. Each. Yep. Add. Same thing, and it is going to be spawn point. One of these times I'm going to get around to doing dependency injection within the code here, but it's in the pile of tech debt. Someday. Okay, we have the spawn point, we have the behaviors, we have the entity. Okie doke. Then that's a behavior. So we should have a handle message here. Really shouldn't be process message. Let's be honest here, Tess. The your backlog, your tech debt pool might as well be the Book of Grudges. It is eternal and spoken of with great venom. So if I was making a zombie game, Cruel, I am partial to zombie games with over-the-top, like, kit-bashed weaponry. It's one of the things that I find disappointing about the Dying Light series, is that there is an emphasis on destructibility of weapons, while simultaneously encouraging you to make these fantastic, like, attach a car battery and, you know, whatnot to a hammer to create some sort of ridiculous thunder hammer kind of thing. This bothers me so much. This is not the naming convention. I'll fix that later. Oh, no, okay. Okay, no. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Because we're not calling handle message. we're calling process message. You override process message. Okay, I remember why I did this. Sanity restored. Okay, we merge in the base message. Whatever the base has said, we're going to check and we're going to make sure our reply is blended in. Then we're going to return reply. It's interesting, Sticky, encountering just the sheer breadth of people doing interesting stuff online. There is a channel that is in my feed constantly that is a guy doing very traditional wood joinery. And I mean like your Japanese style wood joinery. So very effective, very handcrafted, very pretty. And just the number of like custom tools they make and little gimmicks they make, it's always fun to watch. I've seen a channel where a guy casts metal. He salvages and melts down and casts metal into ingots, either for, at this point, a lot of it is for collection purposes. But that's it. The channels are otherwise almost like ASMR channels because there's not really any dialogue to them. It's just the sounds of them working. What's another one that I have? Another fun channel I like to see is North of the Border. They make little clay sculptures and whatnot. Always of like weird stuff. Like there'll be a general theme and then they'll spiral into something kind of bonkers. Like a Magikarp in a like battle mecha suit. That kind of thing. And it's just the process of them working and them narrating that process. It's fun. Okay, so if there was a syntax for this I could use. Yep. There are plenty of things it's like I have no care about the actual thing that even the machine itself or the thing that it produces, but the description of how it works, why it works that way, and the history of it can be very entertaining. Someone recently about why a British mapping museum, like a cartography kind of museum, had amongst their display of old mapping equipment was a box that was for a box full of spiders, essentially. Just, they had a special kind of telescope for triangulation, all kinds of mapping tools, and a box of spiders. And the entire video was just the general, how they would do, it's like ordnance mapping. how they would go about doing that, the history of it, with the teaser of the video and the end bit of information being why that they had a box of spiders as part of their basic equipment. And it's fascinating. Not a Boolean. It's a quote. But now it turns out that they had boxes of spiders because they would temporarily capture garden spiders and put them in a box with a series of little metal frames, and the spiders would weave webs there, and they would periodically take those spiders out, release them again, and kind of swap them out. They would take that spider silk and they would stretch it across a lens very carefully, and then seal that lens. And that would create super fine crosshairs for their triangulation telescopes. For a period of time, apparently they did that same thing with like stargazing telescopes too. Because the old methods of a string or wire or something, it would obscure your vision too much on very small, fine things. But yeah, that's apparently why cartographers had boxes of spiders. Okay. Frequency of firing, how much time has passed since then? We will have child types that will look for particular events, but for the time being, that would primarily be like a gate or similar. That the gate would open when an event happened, and there would be no frequency to it. Remember, it's periodic, but there's like a stream or a site that people are able to call out like color and position, and it becomes a like giant worldwide, we're gonna try to draw pictures. And the weird stuff that results. Okay, if it's a time past message, then we're going to say time past plus equals there was a syntax for this that I'm forgetting. Let's check. There we go. There we go. Is time past message time past sky. Drawing with a mouse is definitely impressive. It's funny to see some professional artists who are so used to like stylus, tablet, that kind of thing, or some other traditional media, just how much they hate the idea of having to use a mouse to draw because of the nature of it. And then some folks who are perfectly comfortable with it. His sky, he is, his front half is leaning across the part of the cat shield, and he is currently threatening to grab my hand / lay his head on the mouse if I don't keep scratching his chin. So a little bit of delay by cat going on here at the moment. Check a couple of things, actually. You know what, folks? I think we are in kind of a good spot to pause for the day. Good spot to pause for the day. So let's wrap up a little bit. Primarily what we accomplished today was a bit of design speculation here. We're still working on the implementation of it, but the goal is to shift the use of our spawner behaviors as they are, and instead, our spawn list for the world map, and instead shift to a series of things that cause spawns to happen, whether that be from particular points in the world or just in general. So the first thing will be to recreate the existing spawning logic that once an entity is in existence, it will begin causing the blobs to swarm from all sides of the screen until that spawner goes away. But for the time being, we're going to pause here. Ideally, our next coding stream will be tomorrow. Failing that, it will be a creepy game stream. I'm not sure which it will be. I have heard that Observation Duty is working on its 8th game. Looking forward to that, but who knows when that'll be. We might get around to mouthwashing, the game Mouthwashing. That's an awkward title. I've heard it's good. It's on the Steam pile of shame, you know. A couple of games like that, though, I do want to look into. But it is October, so, you know, creepy games. We'll see. One way or another, the plan is stream tomorrow. All right, folks. Buttons. There are plenty of titles of games that you have to very carefully navigate. All right, folks, if you like what you saw and would like to see more, remember to like, follow, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. It does help the channel grow. If you do want to consider financially supporting the channel, you can do so through platform-specific means like memberships and subscriptions. I do have channel emotes and the like, and if I get my act together and start posting videos again, you will get early access at the 2nd tier. But with all of that said, I do hope the rest of your day is good, and I will see you next time, folks.